the President-elect of the United States, Donald John Trump.
On that cold January day 6 years ago, a businessman turned reality star placed his hand on Abraham Lincoln's Bible, and America would never be the same again. President Trump said the carnage would stop right here, right now. Our house! Our house! On those same steps 4 years later, a mob tried to stop democracy in its 200-year-old tracks. Aside from today's indictment, Trump could face criminal charges for that insurrection. And the alleged election tampering by Trump and his allies in Georgia is also subject to a grand jury. And don't forget those missing government documents found in Mar-a-Lago, another case the Department of Justice is looking into. A long list of potential charges and headaches for Donald Trump, and yet never enough to dampen his Republican base.
He's falsely accused for the last 6 years.
If we don't stand up for what's right, then we're no better than Venezuela. We're no better than Cuba.
Trump remains the favorite for the Republican nomination because he's made his most loyal supporters believe that America's institutions have always been against him, that today's indictment was always coming.
When they go after me, they're going after you. Our opponents have done everything they can to crush our spirit and to break our will. And 2024 is the final battle. That's going to be the big one. If you put me back in the White House, their reign will be over, and America will be a free nation once again.
It's not just Trump diehards that cling to the brand. Ron DeSantis, seen as his biggest rival, has defended him today. And even his former vice president, who said Trump was reckless on January the 6th, has backed his old boss.
You can indict a ham sandwich, right? The threshold, the burden of proof is very low.
That's a major historical shift.
People have got to know whether or not their president is a crook.
When Richard Nixon faced impeachment for Watergate, top Republicans marched into the Oval Office and told him to step down. And so he did. Not so with Trump.
It's a recognition of the power that Donald Trump still has within the Republican Party. He has a phenomenal following. It may not be a majority of Republican voters, but it's certainly a plurality. Remember when Bill Clinton was impeached, Republicans went after him, and his job approval numbers actually went up. The same thing is going to be true here.
But if Republicans are scared of turning on Trump, perhaps they should fear the wider electorate. They rejected him in 2020, and some of his most vocal candidates failed in the November midterms. There are plenty of swing voters who like Trump but are tired by his baggage. Will this energize them or turn them off even more?
You've got a guy who's been impeached twice, and an indictment isn't that much it's just another shrug of the shoulders for most people. But for some of those swing voters in the middle, it's going to turn out to be a nose holder election, where voters are holding their noses about both candidates and choosing the one that they dislike the least.
So it's 2016 again.
Yeah, and that's as a pollster and a Republican and somebody who's been in this for years, I'm not looking forward to another race to the bottom.
Some voters thought America's politics couldn't sink any lower than that election, but the divides have deepened. And this indictment, with possibly more to come, will test America's foundations like never before.
Well, I've been speaking to David Frum, who was a speechwriter for George W. Bush and is now a staff writer at The Atlantic. I asked him why he thinks so many senior Republicans are backing Donald Trump and whether he thinks they're making a mistake.
Senior Republicans are caught in a bad faith trap. They have all been hoping that somebody else or something else would remove Donald Trump from their lives and allow the party to rebuild, but they all want to appear to be on Donald Trump's side while that happens. And so you have this dilemma that a lot of people who wish he would go act as if they wish he would stay.
Why don't people stand up for what they believe anymore?
Because politics is not a business that selects for courageous individuality. It's a business that selects for self-preservation. And those Republicans who have stood against Donald Trump have found themselves either excluded from the party. That's what happened to a lot of us. Or else they found themselves defeated and thrown out of public life altogether.
Do you think, in fact, this helps him politically and his campaign for the presidency?
Well, the president is about a former president is about to be indicted for what looks like a long list of crimes, electoral and financial. And that's a grievous thing. And the political calculus is second to that. At the moment, Donald Trump is doing very well in the first round in his contest to try to retake the Republican nomination. He was doing well through the month of March as his leading Republican rival, Governor Ron DeSantis, deflated. But this cannot be good in a general election contest. Democratic countries tend not to elect accused criminals to high office.
Well, although we don't have many examples to go by, do we? So it's difficult to call that. I mean, do you think this plays out differently depending on whether there is legal progress, whether it looks like he's guilty or not?
Well, I think we're going to need to find out exactly what it is that he's charged of. It's been reported pretty authoritatively that there will be more than 30 counts in the indictment. Remember, I think this connects to something that people may have forgotten, but remember that just a few months ago, the Trump Organization was accused and convicted of criminal tax fraud. And the method they used to do their tax frauds was to generate false receipts, that people would send in a bill for one thing that wasn't taxed, that would have an expense that was not tax deductible, and they would generate a false tax receipt to make it look like it was something that was tax deductible. And I think it's a fair guess that's what happened here, that Donald Trump's payoff to a woman that he was accused of having a relationship with would not be a tax deductible expense. But if represented as a legal bill, which seems to be what happened, then it does become tax deductible. So what you may have here is one in a long pattern in history of tax frauds that go back over many decades in the Trump Organization.
I mean, the early response to this indictment seems to be sort of across the spectrum that this could be bad for America. This could be bad for American democracy. It could increase division. Do you think there is a scenario in which this is good for America?
You know, we are always invited to be more clever than we really, as human beings, possibly can be. We can't predict the future. We can only know what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do. And that's difficult enough without predicting what the effects of our actions will be. So I would say I have no idea what the effect of this on American democracy will be.
So for you, this is straightforwardly about where the evidence leads. And if the evidence leads there, he should be charged.
Well, let's put it the other way around. I mean, supposing the evidence leads to a fact that a former president did commit crimes, should he be exempt? And which crimes would that be? I mean, supposing a president leaves office, gets drunk, gets in the car, and knocks somebody down. Should the president be exempt from that? I don't think very many people would say so. So if we're going to exempt them, we're going to need to develop a list of, vehicular homicide an ex-president can be charged with, but tax fraud a president can't be charged with. That's going to be a very hard list to develop. I think the simpler rule is going to be that an ex-president is the same as any of us, that if he is credibly charged with an offense, then he will have to stand trial for that credible charge.
David Frum, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.